All right, so welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we're going to be diving into Inauguration Day 2025. We've got a whole bunch of sources like logistical guides for those of you headed to D.C. and articles analyzing what a second Trump term could, well, a second non-consecutive Trump term could mean for the country.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating, isn't it? Like, we're about to see something that hasn't happened very often in U.S. history. It's a really unique moment.
For sure. I mean, it's January 20th, 2025, which, is already a big day because it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
hmm
And then on top of that, you've got the inauguration happening at, the U.S. Capitol building. It's going to be a day packed with symbolism and, excitement. I think it's safe to say that.
Oh, yeah, the energy in D.C. is going to be something else. I mean,
Yeah.
this inauguration is about the peaceful transfer of power, right? Which is, like a cornerstone of American democracy.
Right.
And, well, the fact that we might be seeing Trump back in the White House after a break,
Yeah.
it just adds another layer to it.
Definitely. And it's not just about the political stuff, right? Our sources, especially this trend, this blog, they talk about how people are excited to just be a part of it all. They're planning these viewing parties, getting decked out in red, white, and blue, and just really embracing the whole celebration.
That's what I think is so interesting about inaugurations. They're not just for, like, politicians. It's a moment for the entire country to come together, think about the values we share as Americans.
That's a good point. And um, speaking of being part of the action, for those who can't actually get to D.C., there are still tons of ways to experience the inauguration. You can watch it live on, well, like all the major news networks, online streaming platforms, even government websites.
Exactly. And for anyone lucky enough to, get tickets, it's worth remembering that attending the inauguration, it's a bit of well, it takes some planning. There'll be road closures, limited public transportation, and of course, a lot of security.
Yeah, our sources from the Washington, D.C. website really emphasize that. Like, planning ahead is key. They even have a tip about restrooms. They suggest, figuring out where the portable toilets are beforehand.
What?
Because when you got to go, you got to go.
Exactly. Being prepared and knowing what to expect, especially with big crowds like that. But, beyond the logistics, think about who you'll be around: former presidents, political figures, members of Congress, regular people from all over the place.
Oh, yeah. Trend. This even had a story about this Trump supporter who's been so excited about this day, like for months. He sees it as like a two-chapter of strength and unity for the country. It's kind of cool to see how this event can, inspire that kind of hope and optimism.
That's what I love about it. It's more than just a ceremony. It's a symbol of a fresh start, a chance to think about where we've been and where we're going as a nation.
Yeah, it's definitely got me feeling the energy already. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, maybe we should take a look at what might be on, President Trump's mind as he takes the oath for the second time.
Right. It's easy to get kind of, caught up in the whole ceremony and the crowds and all that. But the real work, it all starts after that oath. And based on what we're seeing, looks like immigration reform is going to be like front and center for President Trump this time around.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. Our trend, this source, they're saying it was a huge part of his campaign, and it's something a lot of people have strong feelings about for sure.
Totally. Well, it's a tough one, right? No easy answers. He'll need to, I guess, balance those campaign promises with actually, running the country. Got to consider the economy, humanitarian stuff, and obviously the political side of things too.
Oh, yeah, it's a balancing act for sure. But immigration isn't the only thing on the agenda, right?
Mm.
There's also mentioned Trump looking to shake things up globally, like what they called a foreign policy realignment.
Right, exactly. Seems like he's ready to take a fresh look at, those international agreements and alliances. We could see him renegotiating trade deals, maybe reevaluating military commitments, even shifting our relationships with certain countries. It's a lot.
That sounds pretty bold. What are some of the potential outcomes of such a big shift in foreign policy? I mean, what could happen?
Well, I mean, on the one hand, it could give the U.S. more leverage in global affairs.
Yeah.
We might be able to get better trade deals, reduce our involvement in those overseas conflicts, and focus more on what's happening here at home.
So there are some potential positives.
Yeah.
But what about, the downsides? Are there any risks?
Of course, yeah. I mean, there are always risks when it comes to, well, anything with foreign policy. Changing existing agreements could, strain relationships with allies. And pulling out of commitments, that could create instability in some parts of the world.
Sounds like a lot of moving parts for sure. And speaking of things that could have a big impact, our sources also mentioned President Trump focusing a lot on the economy.
Oh, absolutely. He's been talking about job growth, tax reform, all that. and less regulation. Those are his priorities this term. And, those are the things that will directly affect, well, pretty much everyone, everyday Americans.
Right, and they're all connected too. Like what he decides in one area, it could impact the whole economy,
For
right?
sure. For example, like if he cuts taxes, that could boost the economy, maybe. But it could also mean a bigger deficit. You got to find that balance, make good decisions.
Sounds like he's got a lot to deal with. But we saw it before, right? President Trump, he's not afraid of tough challenges.
Yeah, that's true. He likes action, and he's definitely not shy about making, big moves.
So we've got immigration reform, a potential foreign policy shakeup, and a focus on the economy. It seems like his second term could be just as eventful as his first, if not more so. But before we get too far ahead, maybe we should step back and think about the bigger picture here. What does all of this mean? Wow, we've talked about a lot, haven't we? From all the excitement around the inauguration to the potential changes coming down the line.
It's been pretty interesting. But as we wrap up here, I think, we should zoom out a bit. Think about the bigger picture. What does this inauguration mean for, well, for everyone in America and for, America's place in the world?
Yeah, that's a good point. We've touched on how Trump's policies might affect the economy, foreign relations, things like that. But how could these changes actually play out for, different communities across the country?
Well, take immigration reform, for instance. Communities with a lot of immigrants, they might see some big shifts, right? Both in terms of like jobs and how everyone kind of fits together.
Right. And trend this. They mentioned that some folks are hoping these changes will, make the country stronger, more united. But others, they're a little worried about, I guess, division and uncertainty.
It's definitely important to, consider all those viewpoints. And it's not just about immigration either. We got to think about how changes to like the economy, healthcare, education, how those things could affect different groups, different income levels, racial and ethnic communities, even different generations.
It's complicated, that's for sure. And then there's the whole global impact too, right?
Yeah.
Trump's foreign policy realignment. That could ripple out across the world. It could change how we trade, our alliances, international relations, the whole thing.
Absolutely. It's kind of like, a giant chessboard. Every move can set off a chain reaction.
It really makes you think about how connected we all are here in
Yeah.
the U.S. and, well, everywhere, really.
Exactly. And it shows why it's so important to, stay informed, have these conversations, and remember that we all have a part to play in, well, shaping the future.
Well said. And for our listeners, if you want to learn more about all of this, we've got a bunch of resources down in the description. And hey, if you want to show your American pride, we've got some pretty cool patriotic stuff on our blog too.
And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our deep dives into, well, all the interesting stuff happening out there.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into Inauguration Day 2025 and everything that comes with it. It's a day that'll for sure shape American history and, well, it'll leave a mark on all of us.